David Saphirstein is our moderator today. Began his career at ESPN doing creatives there. He's a professor at Full Sail in Orlando, and he also is a founder of his own company with success, Venue Edge. He will moderate our panel today. Please welcome David Saphirstein, A View from the Top. David, hello.
I want you all to welcome Todd Harris. Todd is in a unique, in a second, is in a unique position of being on both the publisher side and the event side of Esports. He's a co-founder of Atlanta-based Hi-Rez Studios, one of the largest video game studios in the Southeast, and President of Skillshot Media, the largest dedicated esports production facility on the East Coast. Now let's give it up for Todd. Let's start with that. Tell us a little bit about Hi-Rez and Skillshot.
Sure. So, when you guys saw the ecosystem chart up there, Hi-Rez Studios is in the publisher box. So we develop and publish esports titles. Skillshot is in the box of a lead, administrator, and broadcaster. So if you're not familiar with gaming, think of Hi-Rez makes the basketball. Skillshot is like the NBA and the ESPN, maybe Fox Sports down here. And so from a Hi-Rez perspective, we started with 4 people. We're up to 450 people. We only make multiplayer online games. So we don't do single-player story-driven games or puzzle games. From the beginning, it was all about games that are played competitively and cooperatively with other people all around the world. Most popular game is a game called Smite. Any Smite players out there? A few? Yes. Thank you. Appreciate it. So Smite, just to give you a sense, is as a game, not counting esports, grossed about $300 million to date. So it compares pretty favorably with major motion pictures as far as the media property. We also make a game called Paladins Realm Royale, and just last week we announced another game called Rogue Company. And so that's what Hi-Rez does. We make free-to-play games that are played competitively, and they're a little unique in that they're played on all the major platforms. So they're free to download on PC, but also Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, and you can play with the entire community across all those platforms. So that's what Hi-Rez does.
And Skillshot.
And Skillshot, which I'm repping today. So Skillshot is actually a publisher-agnostic esports event and content producer. So we run all of the leagues for Hi-Rez games. So we run a Smite Pro League, which you heard from multiple folks from Team Dignitas. They're a team that plays within the Smite Pro League. So we run leagues, but not just for Hi-Rez. We actually are going kind of game and publisher agnostic. So right now, Skillshot is running the qualifications for a very popular new mobile game called Brawl Stars. It's made by a completely different developer, Supercell. They make Clash of Clans, Clash Royale. Their new hot game is called Brawl Stars. And we're running all of the qualification around the globe for that game. Another example of what Skillshot does are large events. So I think a couple of people mentioned the Overwatch League, which is a franchised city-based structure. They have a team in Atlanta where we're based. They had a homestand event, and they turned to Skillshot to basically activate that event. So that meant everything from promoting, securing the venue. It was a really hype event. 4,000 fans in the Cobb Performing Arts Center, 2 days of content, broadcast to Twitch, but also ABC and Disney. And right now that Atlanta team, which is an expansion team, was not in year 1, but they're leading the league in terms of merchandise sales, which is a good indicator of fandom. And again, Skillshot tries to take a very community-oriented approach to building esports.
So we were just talking before we came on. I asked you if you played video games and how you even ended up in this. Let's talk about that. How much did you play video games growing up, and what you think you were going to
Way too much. Yeah, I love it. Everyone up here is like, it's not just a kid in the basement. I was that kid in the basement. And my parents were like, you're never going to make money playing video games. And they were very mistaken. Yeah, my path was out of passion, like a lot of folks in the industry. So I am old, so my first game was Pong, Magnavox Odyssey Pong. And then my dad was an IBMer for 30 years. And he brought home one of the very first IBM PCs. Literally, there was an auction. We got one of the first batches. And that's what I cut my teeth on. There weren't many games available for the personal computer then. So I taught myself to program. And the dream of 7th grade me was to grow up and make video games. And the only thing that I thought would make gaming better is doing it with other people. Because at that time, it was really hard to play multiplayer. You were on a dial-up bulletin board, not very fast, playing a text-based game. And the thought was, you had all the graphics that you could play with other people. That would be really cool. So I went to UNC Chapel Hill, graduated computer science. The video game industry actually took a little bit of a dip then. It was, if you read about ET cartridges buried in Nevada, and you're too young. But that actually happened. It took a little bit of a crash, and so when I got out, I started doing business software, and ended up at a couple startups that did very well. Followed a serial entrepreneur around. He made a lot of money, and one day, after 15 years of not doing games, doing business software, he comes into the office and says, I'm tired of business software, I've always liked games, all I enjoy doing is playing games. When I play games at home, my wife is on me saying you're goofing around, get off the computer. So I think I got to start a video game company so it'll be work and research, and you need to come with me. So yeah, so she takes it seriously. So I thought about it for about 2 hours, said yes, and we started Hi-Rez Studios really out of passion. So that was 14 years ago. Started with 4 people. We've been grinding it out ever since.
So you kept that 7th grade dream alive.
Yeah, it took a 15-year detour, came back.
Were you still playing?
Yeah, I was still playing a lot. I mean, you have to cool off a little bit in college when you get a job, but I was still playing the whole time.
So we keep hearing these numbers here during the first panel and just talking about billions of dollars. Where's that money? How's it split up between, first off, is hundreds of billions accurate? Where's it split between esports and the gaming business? Can you break that down a little bit and bring it into realistic terms?
Yeah, a lot of big numbers. So, the first thing that people should keep in mind is just understand how large gaming is as a media form. So whether you even count esports or not, just interactive entertainment, gaming is conservatively $120 billion. Now that's the hardware and the software, and also includes kind of microtransactions, and that's global. But just the numbers all kind of run together, but it's twice as big as film box office. So it's bigger than movies and music combined as an industry. And the other reason it's very interesting is it's growing on all platforms. So while if you're in the theater business, you're kind of struggling to get people to your venues these days, gaming is growing on the personal computer. It's growing on the video games that you see in your living room. It's growing the fastest on the device that you all have in your pocket, mobile. And with new technologies like virtual reality and augmented reality come out, gaming adapts to it. So that's why people are so excited about gaming in general. And then esports is really just the most visible top of the pyramid of everyone playing games. So it's about $1 billion of revenue last year, but there was $2 billion invested externally into just esports companies because of the high growth, because of the 30% year-over-year growth that's expected. So unlike traditional sports, where I might enjoy watching football, but I'm not at my age going to turn around and play football. The reason esports and gaming is so high is you have this circle where when you watch, that tends to encourage you to play, which drives economic value for the publisher, and then you want to get better once you take it seriously. In order to get better, you need to watch the best players in the world. So then that drives you back to watch, which drives economic value for the streamers or the teams or the tournament providers. So it's really the fact that it's participatory and viewable. I think Heather mentioned poker, right? The fact that I watch and then I go and play. That's what really puts it at the intersection of tech, media, sports.
It seems there's a lot of similarities to the .com boom, and that people are putting money in, not really sure where it's going to shake out, where that money is going to come. So you obviously think it's sustainable, but where does that growth really come from, or how does it set up?
Yes, very hot right now. I mean, there's a lot of investment flowing in. I think it's like, cyber currency, marijuana, esports. Those are your three hot sectors. Everyone's just like writing big checks. But the thing about esports that I know, because I live it, is that the macro trends are very strong. That is, people continue to play games. That audience is growing. They don't tend to stop playing as they age out. And then it becomes intergenerational, like I'm playing and watching with my son. And so it's really all of those trends that you don't know what game is going to be popular 10 years from now, but you know that people will be playing games, and more they'll enjoy spectating games. So, as with a lot of investments, some of that money will be lost, some of it's well spent, but I think the macro trend is very, very strong. It's just having a good guide as to where you put your bets.
So, on that note, let's take a dollar bill, put it into the ecosystem. Where are people pulling for that dollar bill? Where are people adding to it? How's that money flow? Like, who's making the money now?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, traditionally and still today, most of the value is captured by the game publisher, right? So in my world, it's Hi-Rez Studios, it could be Blizzard or Riot or Valve. And there's a few reasons for that. The first reason is just licensing an IP. So the big difference with esports, no one owns the game of basketball, and you can start a basketball league here in Tampa next week if you wanted and monetize it. You actually can't do that for League of Legends or Smite or Rocket League. If you're going to build a business, you need a commercial relationship with the publisher because they own those rights. That's one very important piece that a lot of people just miss. And then different publishers have different philosophies. There are completely open systems, the way Valve runs. They're completely closed, or they might say vertically integrated systems, where, say, Blizzard is more in that. And then there's all in between. So just like with sports, where professional football is very different than tennis, there's no one structure for esports. So the publisher obtains most of that value today because they own the IP and because people are so passionate about games. Like ultimately, as much time as they're spending viewing, they're spending more time playing. So just when you look at where the engagement is, it's more time in the game, so there's more chance to capture the consumer attention. And then as far as the rest of that dollar, it breaks down much like traditional sports. So if you're running a league, if you're Skillshot, running the Smite Pro League, you look at what has worked in sports. So it's sponsorships, a little bit of ticket sales and merchandise, and sometimes media content rights. And really sponsorship and media rights are the bulk of the revenue right now, kind of 40%, 40%. And then, maybe the 20% is merchandise and ticket sales. So that's kind of how that dollar is split up today.
So it really is following the traditional sports model. Do you see that continuing, or does a new model get created for a newer industry?
I think it's all of the value of sports will flow into esports, and then they'll be incremental as well. So sponsorships, you heard a lot of people up here talk about that because that's probably the easiest growth right ahead of us. We know that brands are spending today on traditional sports. And if they look at the same demographics that I'm looking at, they want to diversify their bets. They want to reach the next generation customer who may not be watching golf anymore, because the average age of golf is 60, the viewer, and the average age of the NFL is 54. The average age of the NCAA basketball is 45. Those are averages. So that audience is growing. And if you're looking at that, you're concerned and you're going to start to diversify and put your money into esports. Now that said, there's going to be all sorts of crazy new revenue streams. These platforms like Twitch, Mixer, Caffeine, they're interactive. They're much, much better than TV. Much better than TV. Because you can chat with your friends or with the streamer, as people have talked about. And all these platforms are working on new ways to monetize the audience, where I can pay a little money and I get an extra chat emote that you don't have, or I get a special behind-the-scenes view from a player that's different from what the in-game camera spectator person is doing. So this extra content is something that's only available on these digital platforms, and the gaming audience is very familiar with this, because it's the same way they pay for content in League of Legends or Smite or Rocket League, as they're used to paying a little bit of microtransaction for some extra cosmetic benefit.
Not much different than we were talking about with traditional sports, and the networks are looking at second screen experiences. So now that's following the gaming industry as well.
That's right. Yeah, and I think, looking in the crystal ball, the other big opportunity for traditional sports and esports is as sports betting and wagering, as different states take a stand on that, that's going to open up more opportunities. It's just incremental revenue.
So you had mentioned sponsors, and there's a lot of traditional sponsors you would expect to get into esports, but we're starting to see traditional mainstream brands like State Farm, which is huge in the NFL right now. Their spots are also in esports. Is that the trend?
Yeah, it started with the endemic brands, right? The enthusiast gamer brands, the Logitechs, the Alienwares, the Steel Series. But now it has crossed over to consumer products, and as you say, insurance, auto. I mean, I know from talking to State Farm, for them, live sports is one of the things that works for them today, right? So they have a model that shows return for their business for live sports, and they can apply that in a similar way to esports, and it's, again, kind of runs through their machinery, but now can reach this different demographic. So I think you're going to see more and more of that, banking, cards, fizzy drinks, certainly automotive. They've all already started to participate in esports, and I think it was like Q1 of this year where the cover of Ad Week basically said if you're a brand and you're not engaged with gaming, you're already way behind the curve, which I think is true.
Well, and as that demographic gets older, that becomes their demographic.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think, some of it honestly are the gatekeepers of the money. I mean, if you didn't grow up with it, you totally don't get this. This is the thing that distracts your grandkid, in his room, and you don't really get it. So key to all of us in the ecosystem, sometimes it's making them a hero to their grandkid, because they would much rather go to that event than the Super Bowl, many of them. And yes, I'll come back to a funny story there. And then a lot of times it's getting the decision maker to a live event. Because we can all talk here and you see the charts, but it just seems like fairy dust until you actually go to an event and you see that there's like thousands of people with their thunder sticks screaming. It's more hype than any sporting event or concert you have ever been to. Like, just go to an event. You can come up to Atlanta, go to DreamHack if you want, or the next one that comes to Tampa, just go. And then you will believe. That's what happened to Ray Fox, who was an NBA player, got invested. It's what happened with Robert Kraft. I'm sure locally here, when the leaders in sports start to invest, you should wonder what's up. So the funny story about the Super Bowl, real quick, I'm from Atlanta. We hosted the Super Bowl in Atlanta last year. We opened an esports arena in town. It was a way to give access to some public school kids that don't otherwise have access to PCs, so they can practice esports and also develop STEM skills. We opened it in combination with the NFL Players Union, and Jerry Rice and Steve Young were there as a part of it. Steve Young's kid came only because of that esports arena. He has no interest in football. Neither of his boys do. And literally during the Super Bowl the next day, he stayed in the hotel room grinding video games. So, you know, and that's not unusual. So, yeah, that's the future.
You had mentioned media rights, which is obviously the other big piece of the pie. I believe you had streamed events or partnered with Twitch, Facebook, and Mixer. Yeah, what's that process look like to get on those?
Yeah, I mean, again, we have lived this stuff for 15 years, so we were the first studio at Hi-Rez to literally do a 24/7 channel on Twitch. It helped us a lot with Smite in the early days. We said, we're going to be like the CNN of streaming. They'll always have someone on, and that was great. No one else even knew what Twitch was. And then we did the first Twitch Prime deal, which someone spoke of up here, which is a really nice cooperation where if you, as an Amazon Prime member, you can get a Twitch Prime subscription, and that gives you one free support streamer, so it supports their ecosystem. We did the first deal there. We did the first media deal with Facebook Live, and we did the first media deal with Mixer ahead of the much more talked about Ninja deal. So I guess we were a little visionary there, but we tend to, you know, have our eye on the leading streaming platforms. And if you're a content producer, you want competition in that market in the same way that I'm sure Fox Sports has to talk to the rights holder around carrying their sports broadcast. And there's some financial exchange there for the Smite Pro League, and for Fortnite World Championship, or a Riot event. All these platforms want those eyeballs. So there's often a media rights deal associated.
Where do you see the growth of media rights on these platforms that were developed for esports, more digital platforms, or your traditional ESPN, Fox Sports broadcast?
I think it's going to be both. I mean, just 2 days ago, there was another, I forget the company that announced about $20 million in funding to be an esports content provider. So, yeah, I think it's going to be both. I think the traditional linear platforms will still want gaming content, but they're going to have to contend with all of the streaming platforms also competing for that.
We're just about out of time, but what are you most excited for going forward in esports and where the industry's evolving?
Yeah, I mean, I'm most excited, honestly, it's not a business point, it's just a humanity point. I mean, kind of my soapbox is the reason I've gone so hard is I think esports is good for the world. I mean, educational elements like this are very helpful, but I'm a parent. The same reason I like my 16-year-old to play soccer and run cross country, which he does. I like him to play the hell out of Smite and other games because it develops all these kind of mastery, teamwork, communication, maturity, and what sports aspires to, which is to be a fair playing field, it sometimes falls short of, right? And honestly, esports is our best opportunity to deliver on that vision. It is blind to gender, to race, to nationality, and the access is extreme. Like, you're lucky here, you got a great hockey team with arenas, right? A lot of kids grow up, they will never have access to a hockey rink, and they will never be a hockey player because of that, because they don't have that access. Most sports have a physical access component that not everyone has. In a game like League of Legends or Smite or Rocket League, if you have a computer and an internet connection, there is nothing standing between you and being the best player in the world other than your time, dedication, and skill. So that's what I'm most excited about.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much. Let's give it up for Todd Harris.
Thanks.